The world economy is in the grip of a technological upgrade. Global IT spending is forecast to reach over $5 trillion in 2026, an almost 8% increase on last year. We're here at the annual gathering in Davos to collect insights and ideas from CEOs from around the world. And today I'm joined by Thomas O'Leary, CEO and co-founder of Origina, a company that champions software independence, focusing on security, stability, and long-term value. Thomas, great to see you. Welcome to Davos.
Thank you, Andrew. Delighted to be here.
Let's get straight down to business. We'll talk about your company in a moment, but first of all, give me an idea of the challenges as you see them facing companies and the wider economy.
I think that the issue is, particularly I want to focus on technology, but it is related to the wider challenge in the economy, is that CEOs are not asking enough questions about what's happening in the technology industry. So what am I talking about? I'm not talking about AI here for a second, so I know everybody wants to talk about AI, but I want to talk about the amount of time, money, and resources and people that are wasted on unnecessary technology change. And what do I mean by unnecessary technology change? Is that if you look at the landscape, over $5 trillion spent in 2025, going towards $6 trillion in 2026, about 40% of that spend is on change. And we know in our experience in the 250 plus companies, some of the biggest companies in the world we work with, that they're estimated that at least half of that is unnecessary. Unnecessary because they're only doing it because the vendor does not support them, or they're being told by advisors, incorrectly often, unfortunately, that they need to make those changes for either regulatory reasons or security issue reasons, and that's not necessary. So we want CEOs here at Davos to actually wake up and actually be more curious about what's going on in their business, not to just defer to technologists in their business, but ask more questions.
And give us an idea of the impact this is having on companies and on businesses.
Yeah, when you look at I just talked about the money there, but if you look at what's happening in the world, I mean, I'll give you a real life example. A company we do business with is in the travel business. It is based in a data center in Germany. It has 15,000 servers. This is last year, 15,000 servers in a data center. They were being forced by the software vendor to make a change. So what would be the impact of those 15,000, that software change? All of the 15,000 servers would have to be decommissioned. New technology be deployed and those things decommissioned. If those 15,000, as we've now taken the contract, those 15,000 servers, they stay in the data center at least 3 more years. What does 3 more years mean? That saves 45,000 tons of CO2. Now, we all remember what it was like during COVID, but what happens to the rivers and lakes and the pollution in cities when the cars were taken off the road? The cities came back to life. That is just one organization. That's talking about that's just the planetary impact. Look at this beautiful scenery. I want to keep this scenery. But also the cost, the time wasted, totally unnecessary. And this goes on. That's one example, one company. Can you imagine how often that happens? So when the estimates are $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion potentially of unnecessary technology change, I can tell you it's out there, 100%.
Okay, so I'm a CEO, I find myself at a crossroads, I come to you, Origina. Yeah. What's your proposition? What will you do for me if I become your client?
I think you need to push back against the dogma. You've got to push back against the orthodoxy that comes from the technologists in your business. You need to listen to them, of course, but you need to push back. You need to be more curious, okay? So I like to think about us as we're David versus Goliath. The industry does not like what we say, quite honestly, because the industry is designed for financiers to fund businesses. Like, ask yourself the question, why is it that technology companies sell for multiples of their revenue and their valuations are in excess of 30 times their profits? I mean, 30 years to make the money back. Why is that? Because it's actually, it's a money pit. It's the easiest place to make money. So we are asking CEOs to push back against that. And why is it that we're doing it? Well, quite honestly, my motivation is driven to change an industry. And the people around me on my business want to do the same thing. And I actually think it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing for businesses. And we want to talk to leaders here at Davos about making those changes.
You can't just walk into a company where they ask for your advice and say, well, avoid upgrading, don't do it. You can't ask people to stand still because they'd be nervous doing that. So what's your proposition for your clients when you want to help them avoid needless waste and needless expense, but still progress and stay relevant?
So I'll challenge the premise of your question. You talk about standing still. This is not about standing still. We are in a building here in Davos, okay? If they came in to renovate this building, they would not say take absolutely everything out. They would renovate the building, keeping some of the old with the new. It is exactly the same. But for some reason in the technology world, if you leave something old in your building, you're standing still. That's where your question's coming from, and I disagree with that. I would say the same pragmatism has to come into play. Now, we do have a challenge, though, because we've allowed the industry to dictate these things to us for the last 25, 30 years, okay, as leaders. They've come along and said, this is what you have to do. They've brought in their entourage, I call them, and they are the consultancy houses and all the specialists and the security guys and the regulatory guys who are always advising you, oh, you need to make that change. Who benefits from all those changes? So we have a challenge there that we can stop some of this. But in a world where you own the technology, you can actually stop it. You can take back some of that technical independence. And that's exactly what we do. Unfortunately, we have a world where today, if you're a new business, there's lots of, I met yesterday a load of venture capital companies yesterday around Davos. And those companies who are venture backed, they're starting off new. If they want to get the technology, they can't buy it anymore. They can only rent it. So if you rent it now, you're relying on the rules of the company you rent from. Same way the car I drove here is a rental car. I can't go and bring it to a garage. I can't change the tires. I can't put a nicer radio in it. I can't touch it. I'm only on condition, but I can choose. I have an option though. In my life, I can choose to buy a car or rent a car. But if you're in the technology game, ask yourself the question, why is it that we can only rent technology? That's a challenge for us. And how do we take back control of that? Well, we can take back control if we're a large business. If we look at our estates and say, how much of our estates do we already own? We already own significant portions of our estate. Don't switch those contracts to rental. That's what they want you to do. Keep the ownership. You keep the ownership model, you keep some of the control. And I think that's how you gain control. And that's what we do. We come into organizations where they own the technology stack, and it's in the software world, and we intercede and we remove the supply chain. If you remove the supply chain, they step away, all those forced technology changes stop, because all the hangers-on, as I call them, the entourage, they stop coming too, because why would they be there? There's no more, you've no more contract with the vendor.
Final thought then, Thomas, is that a double-headed idea to discuss is one, are you concerned therefore about the direction of travel in kind of the global business behaviours in the terms of the rental policy that you're talking about? And also, what's your view of a brave new world? What would you like to see us all, how you'd like to see us all working down the line?
Obviously, I'd like to see more independence and more better and smarter decisions by leaders. I think that's going to take time. The other side of it is, wouldn't you love to see legislators putting some attention on this? I was on an event yesterday, for example, where will.i.am was spoken about, that he had flown in from Paris at a recent, the AI for Good workshop that was here in Davos. And the guy running the event talked about will.i.am, they had a board meeting, and will.i.am flies from the United States to Paris. He's in a taxi, the flight's delayed, he has to do the board call on his phone, okay? So he talks about the fact that the plane he was on, the pilot had a license. And the helicopter he got, apparently, because he's a pop star, the helicopter he got had a license, right? In a technology world, and especially in the world of AI, but in technology in general, none of these guys have licenses. There's no rules of the road. So what I would like to see is some element of rules of the road, okay? But in the absence of that, what do we do? Well, actually, I think there is power in the leadership. So I would love to see CIOs not just roll in and say, we're an AI-first company. What does that mean? Like, honestly, what does it mean? I don't know what it means, quite honestly. I think people are just coming out with words because they feel it's appropriate to say for their shareholders or for the stock price. I don't know, to be quite honest with you. But what I think they should say is we are a smart technology-oriented company, and by being smart is we make smart decisions. So we will advance our technology in those areas where it needs to be advanced and stay current, and we will not necessarily advance all technology footprints. So we don't actually, if you're in, say, I was talking recently about Pixar. I was in Harvard Business School just before Christmas. We were talking about Pixar with an ex-board member, and she was talking about, well, Pixar had to before they were acquired, they had to be current on technology. I said they had to be current with the animation element of the technology, but they didn't have to be current with the HR system necessarily. They don't have to constantly upgrade that, or the security access system, except keep it secure. So they don't necessarily have to. It's like what the industry loves to do is take one story that's true and apply it across the board. And the reality is actually we need leaders to say, this is a big landscape. $5.5 trillion that the market will be in 2026 or greater, depending how much companies spend on AI this year or can get, how many chips they can get out of NVIDIA in the process. You know, so $5.5 trillion minimum is going to be spent this year. How much of that is actually going to be spent on AI? How much of that is going to be spent on keeping the lights on? And how much of that is going to be spent on change? Imagine if you took that change bucket. Imagine you took that change and you shrunk it in half. Even in half. You put immediately, not like in the future, immediately you allow $1 to $2 trillion to be spent potentially on stuff, other stuff. God knows what. It's not. I'm not saying you have to save this money. We need to invest this money, but I think what you'd end up doing is you'd have a lot more players in the game.
Thomas, you've clearly got a lot of conversations to have here in Davos this week. Good luck with that. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Origina is offering a return to control without compromising security or performance, reducing costs, yes, but also allowing organizations to innovate when it suits them rather than when vendors dictate. This is a shift in the digital economy, one that, if handled well, offers a stable timeline into the long-term future.